Hey y'all, we're back in the garden today on this fine August afternoon to get our second round of fall seeds going. I will be planting a few varieties of lettuce, radish, broccoli, cilantro, and arugula today, and I plan to direct sow the seeds into the soil. Plants like lettuce and broccoli prefer cooler temperatures, so we plant the seeds now while the temperature is still warm for the seeds to germinate, and then once temperatures start to shift and we transition into fall, the plants will really thrive because they do prefer cooler weather versus the hot summer heat. That is when plants like these will bolt and go to seed. So it's really best to plant these specific cool weather crops in spring and fall. And since spring is in the past, we are starting over and going to try these seeds for the fall. Planting in the fall also means that you have to prepare your garden and or raised beds for these plants. So I have already sectioned off a few different areas in my garden where I plan to have these plants grow, and I have to get some fresh compost. I like to always start my seeds off with good fresh soil to give them the best start. Here I am dumping out a mix of compost and topsoil in one area where I want to grow some of these seeds. Typically, I would mix this into the current soil, but because I have already laid down wood chip mulch previously, earlier in the spring and summer, I'm just going to layer it on top so I don't disrupt the soil below. Rotating plants throughout the season can often dry out and deplete your soil, so sometimes it's best to just layer it on top to give the soil underneath a break. I use my garden hoe to even out the soil about 1 or 2 inches thick, which should be enough to start the seeds in. Because the bulk of the summer crops will soon be dying back, I am just sowing these seeds wherever I have room in the garden. The beds I am making are only a few feet wide and a few feet in length. When more plants die back, I'll have more room to work with, but for now, this works just fine for me. I like to just gently pat down the soil and make it look neat, but that's not a requirement. Gardens are meant to be messy and sometimes chaotic. In this bed, I will be planting alternating rows of lettuce and radish. Lettuce is a great succession crop where you can plant new seeds every 1 to 2 weeks or so, and that way you will get a gradual harvest instead of a bulk harvest of 10 crops at once that could go to waste. Depending on how these seeds germinate, I will likely start succession planting them in the next few weeks. I find pre-moistening the soil helps retain moisture so the seeds don't dry out. The garden can still dry out at this time of the summer because the sun is strong in the afternoons, so I will continue to water them twice a day after being planted. I make my shallow trenches to plant the radish about a 1/2 inch deep and about 6 inches apart from each seed. I will sow the lettuce seeds about 1/4 inch deep, and I don't really space them out that much because I can thin them as they grow, and lettuce grows well in small spaces. Today I am specifically planting daikon radish, and I have been enjoying the daikon radish in the spring the past few years. It has a nice peppery flavor. It also does really well being pickled in small cubes or coins. I am only doing a couple rows of radish, and after I get the seeds into the ground, I gently cover them and re-water the soil. You don't want to flood the seeds because that could cause them to shift or float down deeper into the soil, which could impact their germination rate. So when I water them, I try to be mindful of that. Next, I will be planting the lettuce And today I am planting 3 different varieties: romaine, butter crunch, and green leaf lettuce. These are our absolute favorites. Some of these seeds that I have stored are a few years old, so I don't expect many of them to germinate, but we will see what comes up this year. I definitely like to use the seeds that I already have first before I buy more and before I save more. And here is my dog Fig coming to say hello. She is being such a good girl at listening and not walking through the new garden bed or walking on the new seeds I just planted. When I plant new seeds in the garden, I do limit how much time my cat and my dog spend in the garden so they do not accidentally disturb or trample the seeds. But don't worry, Fig still spends plenty of time outside, just not as much in the garden when I have small seedlings or young plants. When our kitty is outside, she has to be in the fenced-in garden area, or else she will try to exit the property, which is not safe. Anyway, back to the garden content. So with the seeds I'm starting, you can of course start them inside earlier in the summer and then transplant them out around this time when appropriate, but direct sowing these seeds into the soil is just the best method that works for me. I find it's much less work. It just goes quicker for me, and overall I find my plants do much better when I direct sow them for the fall. Next on the list are the cilantro seeds, but before I get to that, here is Fig again. This time she's doing some tricks for green beans. She just absolutely loves them, and I love giving them to her. Anyway, I'm going to plant the cilantro seeds in between my carrot rows that I planted last month. I planted the carrots in this raised bed here. I do have some space in between 2 of the rows. I planted them a little further apart, so I think fitting the cilantro seeds in will do well. The carrots came up nicely, and I have been thinning them as they grow. I just dug my trench here, and I plopped in a few of my seeds about a ½ inch deep, only a few inches apart. Of course, I am watering them really well. The thing with cilantro seeds is that they can take a week, if not more, to germinate, so you just have to be patient. Just like with all of my other seeds, I am gently covering up the cilantro seeds I just planted, and I am going to give them a good watering. I am almost done planting for today, and I realized I planted more during this round compared to my first round of seeds in July. I am spreading the soil mixture for the last bed I am doing, where I will be planting my arugula and broccoli. I have room in this section of the garden because out of all the collard seeds I planted, only 1 germinated. I even went back for a second round of seeds and still just the 1 germinated. We did get record-breaking rain and flooding here about a couple weeks ago or so I wonder if that influenced the poor germination, but anyways, at least I have 1. Just like with my last beds, I am pre-soaking the soil. I always pre-soak the soil before I start my seedlings. I do this, of course, outside in the garden and also when I start my seedlings indoors. I am also digging the same style trenches that I did in the previous beds, just a few inches apart. I am only going to plant a few broccoli seeds, and I will plant them right next to my collard. You can see the little seedling in the back left there. I did fertilize the collard seedling along with the carrot seedlings a couple weeks ago. I generally use an all-purpose fertilizer for the seedlings, and I wait for them to get at least an inch or two in height a couple weeks after they've sprouted to fertilize them. I will be doing the same thing with these seedlings in a few weeks, again when they get about 2 inches tall. I'm just planting my broccoli seeds. I just plop them right in the trench, about a ½ inch deep and about 6 inches or more apart ideally. Broccoli plants can get quite tall and they produce these wide, broad leaves, so they do need their space. For the arugula, similar to lettuce, you can plant them closer together, and I sow these seeds about a ½ inch deep. I cover up my seedlings and give everything a good watering. I will be back in the morning to check on them and also in the afternoons to make sure they do not dry out. Temperatures have been high this summer, so I feel like I am starting my August seeds late, but at least they're in. Let me know what you are growing for a fall harvest in your garden, and happy gardening.